obligations, I need to fulfill them. Thank you. If you were in this trajectory with your mom together, then your mom already knows that your intention and motivation is for good. Right. So even if she eventually realizes actually Prophet Abraham and Prophet Moses and all the other prophets, because you need to leave Jesus Christ aside because that's the point of dispute. Say everyone is giving the same message in terms of our salvation. Salvation is the same from hellfire. You're doing the same thing. It will be easier, I hope, in my humble opinion, that she will be appreciative once later you're saying, by becoming like Abraham, the prophet, by becoming Moses, the prophet, following their ways and approaches, it's not going to be something that she would disagree with. Yeah. So like, you're on the right track. So you say, look, even Jesus Christ, he wasn't getting worship from people. He was asking people to worship the one in heaven. And that's what you're trying to emulate. So it will take time. If she notices you praying in a different way, you say, look, I am trying to emulate Christ. In the Garden of Gethsemane, he fell down on his knees and his forehead on the ground and he worshiped. Try it, Mom. If you don't do that yourself, you should try it too. I mean, I saw the Muslims praying. I mean, why are the Muslims praying like that, like Jesus Christ? There were the ample opportunities. So family, or the loss of family, anticipatory loss of the family and their love and so on, is a big, big obstacle. Yeah. I agree. My advice here may not be practical at all, or maybe some benefits. You have to individually yourself find out that in the hereafter, يوم يفر المرء من أخيه وأمه وأبيه وصاحبته وبنيه لكل امرئ منهم يومئذ شأن يغنيه. On that day, يوم يفر المرء, the person will flee from his brother, from his mother and from his father, from his children, because on that day everyone will be themselves. There will be no one to save them. So even though you feel your mother, the attachment that you need, you want to devastate her, she won't be able to help you. You will not be able to help her. So if you want salvation, you have to also think about your own self. قُوا أَنفُسَكُمْ وَأَهْلِيكُمْ نَارًا. Save yourself and your family. So you have to save yourself, because you also have a duty and the right to save you from this life and from the punishment of the hereafter. As no one can save you, your parents, your mom won't be saving you. Then the next step is to save your family. Do all your efforts throughout your life until they become also Muslims. But you have to look after your own priorities, number one to you, because our parents would not be able to help us, and they would not be able to help themselves until they themselves save themselves with the mercy of God. So if you take that approach seriously, inshallah, God willing, hopefully it will give you some motivations to see, how do I work with my mother, who I feel should feel the loss of her child to something alien. To alien. So I think what's important to appreciate is this life, you and I have no guarantee when we're going to die. I might just fall dead next minute.
So I came to see you guys just in case.
I might just fall dead the next minute. What about you? Do you think you can live to your 70s and your 90s and 130s?
So
no idea.
You're implying a sense of urgency.
I'm saying, if we know the truth, don't delay and make it into an obstacle because of the things you've identified. That's why I asked you most important obstacle, the hardest obstacle. If you delay it and if you die on that belief, you don't have the confidence that you're going to go to paradise and you will send them hellfire. Because the guarantee, the confidence comes from knowing the heart has submitted, the mouth has testified, and the limbs have manifested. That's faith. The faith is tasdeeq and iqrar, the iman in the hearts, testification of the tongue, and manifesting in the actions. Okay, that's the manifesting of our faith. Okay. So once we do that, you say, Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah, Ashhadu anna Muhammad Rasulullah, you've broken that uncertainty, the cycle. You now have conviction in your heart that at least I will be saved from the hellfire. And then I can then work towards saving my mum, my dearest mum, from the hellfire.
I mean, you make a lot of compelling arguments. To be honest with you, I feel like on this journey that I'm on, I don't know where I am necessarily on that journey. I think that the way that you approached like this conversation with me, I think this is the right way. Because ultimately, you look at the values like of each religion, and to your point, if I never said anything to my mom about whether I was converting to be a Muslim or something like that, the actions would be reflective of a good person, right? And I think that would go a long way. So I mean, I'm not going to sit here and I'm going to tell you like, tomorrow I'm going to convert.
No, ask yourself.
Because I've been brought up a certain way, you know.
Alan, now ask yourself, what do I still need to be convinced of to make that journey next step? Ask yourself right now.
I think ultimately I just need to be comfortable with the idea that I could lose a part of my family. I need to be comfortable with that. I mean, yes or no? I mean,
absolutely. But you need to be comfortable with the idea that you could also lose your own self in the hereafter, in hellfire.
Right.
So you weigh out the pros and cons and say, look, the best way is the way that I need to take, which looks into account all of this, the good for me and the good for my family.
And the other part of it for me, aside from obviously just the spiritual enlightenment, right, that would take place, is that my friend Smile, he's Muslim and he tells me, facts of the Quran and things of that nature from a historical standpoint, right? And I feel like I need to do my own due diligence, right?
I thought he picked up a Quran today.
And I picked up a Quran today because I actually believe in being educated and like I don't go out here, spewing ridiculous facts left and right, because I've identified that here completely, right? People that share my religion spewing ridiculous facts. So I think I need, that's part of my journey, right, is also understanding kind of like the foundations, right, of what's in the Quran, which I haven't done yet. So shame on me for that, but I need a multifaceted kind of approach to conversion, right? It's not just these values that are important, which I agree they totally are. And obviously, when you weigh things, being saved from hellfire, as you put it, weighs pretty high on that list. But that's just
so. Let's work on, if you don't mind, three things which will help us to make that step in this trajectory in certainty. It's called the journey of certainty. Number one is the whole idea of God and the concept of God, because you believe in God already, and you also believe that God is the one who is worthy of our worship. He's the one who deserves our worship. So we need to get the concept of God right. Is God a tree, or a rat, or a human being? 3 in 1, 1 in 1, whatever, right? Second, once we've established that, Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, what about him? Can he be demonstrated to be a prophet raised by God, approved of God, a messenger from God? And third thing, the Quran. Is the Quran demonstrative of God's revelation, that is the revelation He sent? So if I were to just briefly give you some hints in terms of the way you can approach these topics, it's like this. The one who deserves our worship is the one who has to be perfect, independent, self-sufficient, free from all needs. A tree is dependent on a lot of things for its nutrition. If you cut the nutrition, cut its roots, supply of sunlight, carbon dioxide and oxygen and so on, the tree will not last long. It's dependent. A rat likewise, human being likewise, you name anything in the creation, they're not worthy of worship. The only being worthy of worship will be someone who is free from all needs. As a Roman Catholic, you believe in Jesus Christ to be a special Son of God. Some people consider to be a divine Son of God, has some element of divinity within the Godhead or Godhood. Now, let's question this for a second in terms of what does it even mean? Is Jesus Christ, the Son of Mary, the second member of the Trinity, independent and self-sufficient. Because if we find that he is not, then he cannot be worthy of worship. That solves the question quite easily. Jesus Christ, the second member of the Trinity, the Word, rather, eternally proceeds from the Father. That is the creed. God begets in the archaic language, or makes this procession, and Holy Spirit is spirated. So let's talk about just the Son or the Word for the time being. This Word, or the Logos, or the second member of the Trinity, is eternally dependent. Time is not a matter of factor. Eternally dependent of its own existence on the Father. Anyone who is dependent on something else is not self-sufficient. The Father, within this understanding of God, is self-sufficient. The Father doesn't depend on anyone. So the Son, Jesus Christ, the Logos, the second member of the Trinity, cannot be self-sufficient. You only need one reasonable argument to make that assessment and say, the fact that he is in need of the Father, he cannot be worthy of worship. And when you look at the Bible itself and his life that he demonstrated and recorded by the people, he is constantly asking people to worship the Father, not him. He himself is worshiping the Father in the Garden of Gethsemane, falling on his knees, on his forehead on the ground, and so on. So his life, his words, his teaching, reasons, all dictate and demonstrate that he is one in need of worshiping God, the Father. So that concept of God, in a nutshell, should be easy for you to take the next step and saying, okay, I believe him is part of a trinity of some way, but he's not worthy of worship. That's what Islam says. So you've come forward in a concept of God in which God alone is worthy of worship, as Islam wants us to believe in it. Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, Christians don't believe in him because if they do, they will become a Muslim. So that's another obstacle in which he is not accepted to be a prophet and a messenger of God. Question number one, is it something that was an alien thing, that a prophethood is unheard of in Roman Catholicism? Of course not. God has sent prophets and messengers in the past. In fact, the people saw Jesus Christ as a prophet when he did the miracles. There's a mighty prophet has arisen, doing the mighty works of God with the power of God, healing the sick, the blind, the lepers, and so on and so forth. He was a prophet to them. So, did he say that I am the last prophet? In fact, even within the Gospels themselves, if you believe in their historical reliability or if you don't, still, if you assess them on their merit as they stand, it says Jesus Christ is speaking to his disciples and he's saying, I have many things to tell you, but you cannot bear them now. You're not ready. But when I go, I will send him, and he will guide you unto all the truth. Few points to note and observe. His mission about the kingdom of God is not yet complete. It will be completed, the one who will come after him, only when he goes away. He will come and guide us all the truth, which is not now something that able to grasp and bear. So any truth that we're talking about, which is going to be universal truth later, they're not ready for that yet. There'll be many examples of that. So the idea that someone will come after, Christendom has somehow understood that to be the Holy Spirit. If you ask any Christian pastor or a priest or the clergy, name us certain truth that the Holy Spirit has brought that Jesus did not already bring. They'll be struggling. For the last 20, 30 years, we've been asking this question to educated clergy when they come and pass by in Speaker's Corner. Online discussions in the internet with them. Why are they struggling to find truths, universal new truths, that could not have said by Jesus to his disciples? Okay? Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, on the other hand, if you ask, he brought guidance which is going to be universal for all truth. Take the example of usury and interest. One example, within the Jewish belief system, they can deal with usury and interest with the goyims, with the non-Jew, but not according to themselves, I'm Muslim, with others, other than the Jews. You and I know, my friend, interest and usury is one big problem for the global economy and the working of the whole systems of life, because that's how somehow encapsulated in slavery by the system. Muslims themselves are suffering because of that, because the whole system is now basically usury and interest. The Quran, the Prophet Muhammad brought a system in which says, don't take usury and interest at all. Can you get a better truth than that, a better law than this? You can't. So, when Prophet Muhammad brought these laws, you will be able to recognize them to be the best of all the laws, of all the guidance, universally applicable at all times. So when Christ was saying about the truths, I just gave you one of the examples. I can give you many, but just to show you, Prophet Muhammad cannot be someone to say like, I can't believe in prophethood and so on, because prophethood was already the mechanism in which God guided people. He guided people through sending prophets and messengers in the past, Jesus being one of them, and he wasn't the last of them. So it is not difficult for you as a Roman Catholic to say, can I consider Prophet Muhammad to be a prophet of God? Okay? A room is now open for you to consider. Now look at him and his life. What was he like before prophethood? Was he known to be someone who is a deceiver, a cheat, an oppressor, a person who is unkind, someone who is not to be even thought about listening to? Or was he rather someone who was the most noble, the most upright, the most truthful, the most reliable, the kind, the one who wanted everyone to imitate him? I want to be like him, like that. That's exactly how Prophet Muhammad was. So one point when he went to this mountain and called people with this call that they were familiar with, they all left their jobs, their studies, everything they had. They said, what's wrong? Because they had a system of calling in which, if there's an imminent danger approaching, people will go on the top of the mountain. Ya Sabaha! There are mechanisms like that. Everyone will gather. They didn't have all this social media at that time, right? They would go on the top of the mountain, they shout, listen, people run. What's wrong? Because it's a community safety affairs. They will go because they want to solve the problem that is imminently a danger and a threat to the community. So when he asked people, if I told you there is an army waiting to attack you, would you believe me? You know what they replied? Yes, we will. We have never known you to lie. You've always been truthful. So they testified of him. But when he said, now believe that I am a prophet of God, I'm inviting you to worship none but God and leave all your idols, that's when we said, no, we're not going to believe, because it went against their economic interest, political interest, social interest. You can just keep naming them, because that's their status quo, that's their pride, their glory, their business. They didn't want to worship one God, because now who was going to pay all this homages and privileges to all these idols that they have erected? So that was the reason, not because he was considered to be someone not believable. They testified him to be as-sadiq al-amin, truthful and trustworthy. What was he doing after his prophethood? Did he become a prophet? Now let's really be, critical, and I apologize for all our Muslims brothers who might watch it later and say, how can you even put the Prophet Muhammad under this scrutiny and test? Let's imagine, for the sake of argument, we want to assess him. Could he be fake? Could he be an imposter? Anyone who is pretending someone to be, there must have ulterior motives. What could be his motives? Let's understand one by one. Did he do this out of his own personal gain? That he wanted maybe money, fame, maybe he wanted women, maybe he wanted social status? Let's analyze one by one. At one point they said, when he started calling people worship Allah and none else, they said, no, you stop all that. Don't say these things. Eventually to a point, okay, you name worthy woman. Who do you want? We will give it to you. Imagine, someone's after a woman, right? A womanizer says, just name them. We will just give it to you, whoever you want. You want money? Just name your price. All the wealth you have it. You want to be noble? You are already noble from the Quraysh, Bani Hashim. We will make you the king. He's now have an offer, being the king and the ruler, so he can now satisfy his desires, what he wants, to be the ruler and rule over the people as he wish, all the money and the wealth and the women. What else does he want? He had all of it. You know what he did? He declared all of that. At one point he said, even if you were to give me the sun on one hand and the moon on the other, I would not stop calling you to La ilaha illallah. Worship God and none else. So he refused his offer. So material gain, social status, wealth, honor, fame, being a king, none of them could be his motive. So that's out of the window. Critically thinking, that couldn't be his motive. Did he want to unite the Arabs? Maybe. He saw the Arabs are disunited. They were fighting over each other over one camel for 40 years. Is he wanting to unite the Arabs? How is he doing that? By saying, this Jewish lady, Maryam, the mother of Jesus Christ, is the best of all the women. What would the Arab feel? How can you do that to us? Right? You are elevating a Jewish lady to the best of the women. Nisa al-Alameen. That's not going to unite the Arabs. I'm just giving one example out of many. And the Quran says, you Arab, you bury your own daughters alive. For what reason? You will be questioned. بِأَيِّ ذَنبٍ قُتِلَتْ. For what reason were they killed? You bury your own daughters alive. So he's questioning the status quo, the traditions and the norms. If you start questioning the tradition, British culture, they will say, oh, you're not one of us. Right? So once he started doing this, what you realize, he's not trying to unite the Arabs. He's making divisions between them. In fact, they were divided. His family and his others, uncles and others, they're all divided because now he's saying, worship none but God. And others saying, no, worship Lat, Al-Uzza, Al-Manat, and so on and so forth. So uniting the Arabs wasn't the case. What about maybe, okay, fine, that couldn't be his motives. Maybe moral reformation. He's trying to more elevate them. But look how he's criticizing and how he's bringing that you, an Arab, you stand no different from a non-Arab. Okay? He's criticizing, he's making everyone the same, and he even saying their morals that they had, it's wrong. Because the concept of morality that they had, he's changing it. He's bringing a universal morality in which there should be no distinction between the king and the pauper, the rich and the poor, but all in the sight of God, they're all the same. Right? The most noble among you is not the one. The most noble. Is this a one-way conversation? I said, my friend, if you want to have a conversation, I can speak to you later.
It just sounds like
you don't need
to.
You
know, why are you stressed? It's an A and B conversation. See your way out.
Do you notice the problem?
Yeah.
That's precisely the problem. Sincerity is a key issue in anything. If we want to sincerely accept the truth, we have to test our hearts. Is our heart biased against the truth, or is our heart? I'm not talking to you. I'm not talking to my friend here. Is our hearts totally in line to the truth, and it's ready to accept it wherever it might be? So the Prophet ﷺ brought moral precepts, moral ideas and ethics, which goes against their traditions and the norms of morality. So it couldn't be moral reformations. What else? Okay, maybe he was mentally ill. Astaghfirullah. Maybe he was deluded and he thought he was a prophet of God. Maybe he was insane. You'll be surprised. Many people think that way. Now, is he deluded and saying, أَوَلَمْ يَرَ الَّذِينَ كَفَرُوا أَنَّ السَّمَاوَاتِ وَالْأَرْضَ كَانَتَا رَتْقًا فَفَتَقْنَاهُمَا وَجَعَلْنَا مِنَ الْمَاءِ كُلَّ شَيْءٍ حَيٍّ أَفَلَا يُؤْمِنُونَ? Do not the unbelievers see? Have they not known found that the heavens and the earth was joined together as one piece, and we parted it asunder, and we brought every living thing from water, would they then not believe? That is not the speech of an insane, crazy person. This is a person who's inviting you to reflect on the creations of the heavens and the earth, and then telling you at the end, would you not believe, meaning in the middle, he's giving you some evidence that it was all joined together as one piece, singularity, and it was parted asunder, explosion, inflation, whatever you want to call it, and then every living thing was made from water, brought from water. Now we see evidence within that statement. So that is not reflection of an individual who's crazy and insane, who's having ideas like this. This is someone who is in their right senses, someone who is really rational, intellectual, addressing not matters of emotional attachment, but really inquiring with mind to mind, intellect to intellect, and say, do you not see that already? Why do you not believe then? Is he really deluded to think that he is? Why is he saying, do you not see how Joseph, the prophet, how he addressed his king? He didn't say Pharaoh, he said king. How Moses addressed as Pharaoh. Why is he making this historical distinction if he's deluded? How is he able to do that when the Bible, for example, is not making that distinction? How is he able to make prophecies of the future? The Romans have been defeated in the nearest land, but they will be soon victorious in about 3 to 9 years. How is he able to do that? He is making these precise statements, prophetical statements, prophecies in the future which came to true, and when people witnessed this, they were rejoicing. So, person who is insane and crazy and deluded, it's not reflective of his statements and of his life and so on. Some people say he's sincere. Of course he's sincere. Sincerity has to be an arbiter of deciding something if it's bringing correct or not. But it doesn't stop him being a prophet of God because he's sincere. You have to be a sincere individual when you're delivering the message. So when we look at the prophet, I'll just give you some examples. Of course, you can analyze it as much detail, as much, emphatically to go and scrutinize his life. You will see the motives have gone out of the window. Some people say, oh, you know what, he's suffering from epilepsy, and that's why he's able to bring these revelations. Since when did an epileptic fit brings about a revelation detailing about the laws of how to govern a life? Politics, economics, social structure, how to do science and technology, how to learn about history and understand the historical things that was already unknown and lost, how to know the future already while you're in the present, because prophetical statements. Epileptic fits cannot bring any of that. Did he even have epilepsy? Is he reflective of epilepsy? Of course not. People don't even understand what epileptic is. The grand mal and the generalized seizures and so on. I saw an individual, an ex-Muslim, spend about 8 hours making a video on this. Do you know why he spent 8 hours? Because he knows he has to come up with something like that, because how else is he going to explain it? And yet, he will fail. Why? Because if you know an epileptic fits and so on, people will remember after the fits. The Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam was able to recount this surahs, long surahs and so on, to the letter and sound, and he was delivering to his people with this eloquence and precision and the beauty and the information content. That is not what you get from epileptic fits. So epilepsy cannot describe the phenomenon called the Quran. So what are we left with then? We are left now to examine how was he dealing then? When he left, when he passed away, how did he leave? Did he leave a lot of wealth? You can see a 3D is it 3D or whatever, 360 footage of a reconstruction of his house. What's in there? You'll see a bed made of mattress made of leaves of the palm tree, perhaps a stone for his pillow, a cooking pot which has some barley or something, a water utensil, his shield that he had given to him entrusted by a Jewish individual, and hardly anything else you can find. He left nothing. His life, he was living like an ordinary individual, a poor individual, when he could have lived like a king. He could have died like a king. So his life, the way he approached the whole of the life, isn't reflective of someone who is trying to pretend to be a prophet and live a life of luxury and so on.
You mean like people paid by the Sumerian to come here every week and speak?
When his people was, I'm not listening.
Paid by the Sumerian guy.
When his
to come here and speak.
people, when they followed him and they were tortured by the people. It's okay, brother.
Don't tell me to shut up, fool. Who the fuck are you, bro?
Okay?
So how much are you paid by the Sumerian every week
In
to
fact,
come here and speak to people?
I'll tell you what. It's okay. It's okay. It's okay. I will answer your question. It's okay. It's all right. It's all right. Brother. It's okay. Now,
But I was offered $500 a week by the Sumerians to come here and lie.
now let me tell you what. Right. Number one, no one pays me any money.
There you go.
And I'm forfeiting a lot of money that I could have earned. But I do that because I enjoy speaking to people. Because I think some of us who have, Allah has given us a little bit of knowledge, they should use and utilize this knowledge and pass it on to others. This is at least the minimum thing that you can do. You know, minimum that you can do to help others on that, to be on that journey of certainty and safety and save yourself from the hellfire. So Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam and his followers were tortured for their belief. Sometimes you had someone dragged into the hot sand, in a burning sun, and put a huge rock on top of their chest and saying, denounce your belief in Allah. He says, Ahad, one, God is one, God is one. They were tortured to such an extent. Sumayya was martyred, right? Radiallahu anha. When Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam and his community was boycotted for a number of years because of their faith community, they were at one point eating leaves of the tree to sustain, because it was an economic boycott. No one was trading, helping, and so on and so forth. So all of this political, economic, social boycott and torture and aggression, when he was in Medina and established a state, and he came back to Mecca as a conqueror, what he could have done? He could have taken revenge. Because all that people, every single people that were killed and tortured, he could have done the same. But guess what? He said, "O people of Mecca, you are now granted general pardon. Everyone, whoever goes into this house of X, Y, and Z, you're safe. If you go and hang around the vicinity of Kaaba, you're safe. You're safe if you're there, you're safe if you're there. No one will harm you. The army, the Muslim army that has come is not going to take your life away, will give you sanctity and security of your life and your honor and your family and so on and so forth."
Can you relax, man?
Are you actually Catholic? Right.
Are you? Yeah, I'm Catholic.
Right.
I'm Catholic, but guess what? I'm a New Age Catholic. I'm not an 11th, 12th century crusader.
Okay.
I'm trying to be informed that you just keep trying to have an argument with this guy. It's kind of annoying, to be honest with you. It's kind of annoying. You're still here. Like, the question this is what's gonna happen. You're gonna ask your question. You're gonna ask your question.
Yeah.
He's gonna give you a sensible answer.
Okay.
And your answer is gonna be ridiculous, right? Because you're being ridiculous. You are ridiculous right now.
All right, man.
Like, I've been trying to hold it in. No. I've been trying to hold it in.
You're being fake.
I don't think
You've been very bothersome. You've been very bothersome.
Neither do you, bro. You keep interrupting people.
Is it okay if you just keep
I
listening?
just called him fake.
I can have a conversation with you later. Is
You
that
don't know
okay?
anything about me. You don't know
I said
anything
yes,
about
inshallah,
me.
God
The
willing.
difference how we sit and listen and how you sit there trying to attack
Sorry, I
people.
wasn't even trying to have that conversation.
It is
Anyway,
sus. He's
so-
educating himself.
It's all right, brothers, please.
Keep bothering him.
You see, look, I may have a little bit more patience than my brothers and my friend here. You need to appreciate that.
I don't even think that
I, at one point,
Catholic. I'm Muslim.
I at one point would have reacted with you and said, look, you stop talking like that.
Yeah.
But now I'm just saying, if I know what, let's take it easy.
Yeah.
I can talk to you later.
What are we even debating?
Okay.
We're not debating.
I'm not debating with you.
Learning from him.
I'm not
He wants to learn
debating.
about Islam. He wants to learn about it.
I'm just giving some hints and tips from my friend here who is going to take a journey of certainty by his own will, his own efforts, his own sincerity. No one can convince him by force or by compulsion. Do you understand? Thank you. Right. So Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he could have wiped them all out, but he granted general pardon. Apart from three individuals who were like committing treason and so on, they were punished. But generally everyone had. That is why even the non-Muslim critics consider him to be, he is reflective of Ar-Rahmatul Lil Alameen, the Prophet, the mercy to the whole world, the Prophet of mercy. This is how he was. In fact, the teaching that he has from the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he even said there was someone, a prostitute, once she saw a dog thirsty. She took some water from the well and quenched the thirst of that dog. And for that reason, the Prophet said, Allah would have mercy on her and grant her paradise. Someone help her. Just for that action. There are many examples like this. The action Prophet, merciful. That we need to be so merciful. So he brought the message of mercy. His life was one of compassion, kindness, the one of justice and fairness. The dealing that he had with people is likewise like that. So when he dealt with people, you will see that he was dealing with fairness and justice. No one disagreed with him. Even before he was the Prophet, they wanted him to be the arbitrator. During the placement of Hajar al-Aswad, the black stone, on the Kaaba, at one point, they were rebuilding the Kaaba because they had some damage and they need to repair it. The Kaaba has this stone that needed to put it back on it. All of them now having like disputations, like how are we going to put this back now? It's so special, so much of a privilege. Who's going to do it? Banu Hashim, Banu this, Banu that, this tribe, these leaders. They were at a mess. They were saying, now what we're going to do now? A fight might start breaking again, might last for another 40 years or 80 years because of that. They made a point like next thing, the following morning, I'm just recounting this story as much as I recall, says, whoever comes first, okay, we'll just take him as an arbitrator, whatever he says, or she says. Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam came along and they were so happy to see him. They all agreed and acknowledged and approved he's the right person to make that decision. You know what he did? He says, okay, fine. In a piece of cloth, put it on there. You hold on that corner, you hold on that corner, you tribe and you communities on that corner, and then you all lift it together and place it. Solve the problem. So much this wittiness, this wisdom and so on, Allah granted. Because Allah is preparing him to be the prophet for all of mankind. So when we look at his life and his message and his teachings, how he dealt with people, we see that people, they just wanted to even become his follower just by looking at him. Abu Bakr as-Siddiq, for example, why is he called as-Siddiq? Because they did not consider him to be in any way, even though it's outrageous, they would believe in him because of his character. So when the Prophet said, you know what, last night I went from Mecca to Jerusalem and came back, and from Jerusalem I ascended to heaven and I came back. Now, even the believers, some of them, they were saying, how can you do that? How can you go from Mecca to Jerusalem, which takes months with the mount, whether it's a camel or a horse or something? There weren't aeroplanes those days, 1440 years ago. How can you claim that you in part of an right, you went from Mecca to Masjid al-Aqsa in Jerusalem and heaven and so on. But Abu Bakr says, I believe in you. Because I believe revelation comes down to you from the above 7 heavens. And what is this? Jerusalem and going to heaven. That's why it's given the title As-Siddiq, the truthful one. Right? There are people who believed in him just because of that, because they see in his life and actions as they grow up together that he is a man of trustworthiness and reliability. So his life is something that will demonstrate he is not an imposter, he's not a fake, he's not someone who's pretending. Now look at the Quran that he's brought. My last point. When he brings the Quran is such that when the people heard it, what were they opining about it? What was their opinion? It's magic. They knew Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam was not a learned person, did not go and learn the poetry, did not go and learn the prose and the literature and so on, because he was among them. The Quran even says that if he was someone like that, you would have known and you would have said, no, you would have rejected him, because they known him growing up within themselves, among themselves. So when he brought the Quran numbed the whole of Arabian Peninsula, because it came with a speech that they knew what was not the speech of the Arabs, the speech of anyone else. It was not the speech of a human being. ليس هذا كلام البشر. They had to admit this is not the speech of a human being. Interestingly, people don't realize this. Historically speaking, during that time, the Arab, they hold pride in 2 important things. Do you know what they are? One is the birth of a male infant, male child. They will be so happy a son is born. They will be celebrating it. But if a female child were born, their faces will be darkened and gloomy, and they'll say, oh, what's happened to us? And they will feel so much shame in their community. And with this misery, they will take that child and bury her alive. But they celebrated the birth of a male infant. The other thing they celebrated and got proud was the composition of a poetry. They were so much into poetry, they would held poetry competitions. They had wukas, market of wukas, where they will compete against each other. You know how the rap artists compete against each other in the same rhymes? Alhamdulillah. Alhamdulillah. They had something like this. One poet says something, composes with this something, the other poet responded back, and so on and so forth.
Right.
Best of this poetry, they will hang on the wall of the Kaaba. They had this 7 mu'allaqat, 7 hanging poems. We have remnants of those today, translated even in English by A.J. Aubrey. Aubrey translated it, and even in the English you can see the beauty, the eloquence, and the depth of meaning, and how much
It's so funny you say that, because we just went to the British Museum today, and we went to the Islamic World exhibit, and there was a whole section on just poetry, inscriptions from every single era that's existed up until this point.
So the Arabs were masters in their poetry, masters, so proficient that this is where they would pride against each other and so on. When Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, known to be unlettered and ummi, he brought this Quran, what happened to it? What were they saying? They couldn't say anything apart from maybe it's magic, right? Because when the Quran came, when the Arab says Tifa nabki min dhikra habibin wa manzili bisitt al-liwa bayna ad-dakhuli fa hawmali. These are the first 2 baits or sentences from Imrul Qais the poet, talking about something. How Quran is none of it like that. The stylistics of the Quran is unlike anything of the Arab literature, their genre, their corpus. Totally unique. Totally unique. But yet it was Arabic. It was none of their styles of poetry in the Bihar they have al-khafif, al-madid, al-tawil, al-rajas, al-mutakarib. I haven't studied formally, but that's how they're specific meters and rhymes. Syllabic, when you have syllable, strong, emphatic, less emphatic, and so on. That's 16's Bihar. Quran is none of them. It has its own genre. So when the Quran came and says, وَإِن كُنتُمْ فِي رَيْبٍ مِّمَّا نَزَّلْنَا عَلَىٰ عَبْدِنَا فَأْتُوا بِسُورَةٍ مِّن مِّثْلِهِ وَادْعُوا شُهَدَاءَكُم من دون الله إن كنتم صادقين فإن لم تفعلوا ولن تفعلوا فاتقوا النار التي فاتقوا النار التي
I mean,
So this-
no, we actually have to get going. We have
I'm
another
just
engagement.
translating this, okay? I missed my thought in the ayah. I should have finished the ayah, but anyway. This ayah of the Quran says, if you are in doubt as to what we have sent down, revealed to our slave, Prophet Muhammad, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, produce a chapter like unto it, a chapter. If you are truthful, if you can't do it, seek helpers and your supporters besides Allah to do this job. But if you cannot do it, and you will never be able to do it, then fear the hellfire whose fuel is men and stones. So the Quran put a challenge there, saying, bring something like it. For the last 1444 years or so, the Quran challenge is still there and people are failing to bring something like it. This is indeed an eternal, when I say eternal, for us, for all times, a challenge against us if we don't accept this truth of the Quran. Because the Quran is demonstrating with a falsification test that it is indeed from Allah, from God, as a revelation. So I'm just offering you to reflect on the teachings of the Quran about Allah, about you, about the hereafter, about heaven, about hell, about your responsibility, about who your creator is and the right of your creator, worshipping him alone, and about following the right path, the path of those that God has favored and not the path of those that people receive the anger of God. Or they went astray. We need to follow this path where God is pleased with. So this is what your journey should take place, of investigating, scrutinizing, and eventually verifying and affirming that this is indeed the true revelation from Allah, the true message from Allah, and this is true religion from Allah. Then what would you then be stopping yourself from? You will say, Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah, I bear witness that none is worthy of worship except Allah alone, wa ashhadu anna Muhammadan abduhu wa rasuluh, then I will also bear witness and testify that Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, may God's peace and blessing be upon him, being the servant and messenger of Allah. This is your next step of your journey of certainty, my friend. All the best.
Thank you so much.
I thank you
God
for
be with
listening
you.
very patiently, but I'm sure God will make it easy for you, because Allah guides those who are sincere. And I see all sincerity within your heart.
sincere guy.
And inshallah, I hope to see you soon as a Muslim in this Hyde Park, maybe, or here,
Time for
right?
Nyata, we'll take it back.
Inshallah.
We'll come back, we'll do it
Inshallah.
again.
Okay?
Inshallah.
Take